playing Esper Dragons. So Kyle making his way through the bracket. I'm not sure about the update on Brad Fallon playing Gruner Dragons versus Alex Zarowski. And it looks like I've just been informed that Brad is up again with his Gruner Dragons deck against Jeskai Token. So we have more on that. We'll let you guys know as Mullen's going to sacrifice a 1 to 8 to get a force, go down to 19. Elvish Mystic, so a little acceleration to start.
Very important for Collins. He's got to get ahead of schedule here. Get his defenses set up and then start attacking with something.
Heroic decks typically prey on mid-range strategies that are green-based like this. And this one doesn't have a ton of removal. It does have a card like Valor Stance, does have Dromoka's Command. But Collins doesn't have a ton of removal, as Ross is just going to pass the turn back. Don't see no turn 2 play from this deck very often, though sometimes we have seen players opt to, say, play something on turn 3 with a Johnny's Presence or God's Willing in hand.
I know Monastery Mentor right now in Ross's hand, and that could be the game plan here. A slower hand, replays this, hopes that it sticks, and then goes crazy.
We've seen him do that before in this matchup against Chris Anderson earlier today.
And that was a matchup where he went wide against Whisperwood Elemental, which is very impressive. Collins does not have that card. He has Sorok the Hunt Caller as his curved topper of choice alongside Dragon Lord Ojutai. And I think that card may actually be more powerful in this matchup than Whisperwood Elemental because Ross is allowing Collins to develop his board.
Well, what Monastery Mentor is going to do is it's going to force Collins to have, number 1, an untapped white source, and 2 Dromoka's Command. Because this needs to be taken off the table. We saw what this did against Chris Anderson. This thing gets out of control real fast.
Yes.
Additionally, if you don't take care of it right now, the chance for Ross to have a protection spell for it, God's Willing and Johnny's Presence, is very high.
The door shuts very quickly.
Yep.
And Collins with 2 copies of Glare of Heresy in his sideboard as well as an answer right now on top of Dromoka's Command, but I do not believe he has untapped white mana, and I'm not even sure he has one of his responses.
Yep. He has a Hornet Nest. But that's something that Ross will be able to go wide around.
Yep.
If Ross was on one of his heroic big creature draws, make a large Hero of Iroas, maybe that would cause a problem. That's not the case. So Merriam gets to untap with a Monastery Mentor, and now we get to see what he can do. He'll start with a Temple of Plenty.
Keep in mind, Ross also sideboarding 2 copies of Aqueous Form, which is another way for him to circumvent Hornet Nest.
Merriam does have a copy of Seeker of the Way in hand. I think he may have another copy of Monastery Mentor as well. He'll also find a copy of Ordeal of Thassa. He'll play a Seeker.
And a second Mentor in hand.
I'll just pass the turn back. Nothing crazy going on for Merriam just yet. Dromoka's Command the draw here from Mullen. Red zone with the Raptor. Merriam going to go down to 12. No interest in blocking here. There is a forest. We'll see how Collins decides to use his Dromoka's Command. But his hand is also pretty good. He's got Fleece Mainline, Dent Protector, and Dragon Lord Ojutai. All very, very powerful cards.
I really like casting Dragon Lord Ojutai here.
Get to work.
Just got to start attacking. You got a Hornet Nest, locking up the ground for the time being. You don't have as much time as maybe you think you do. And with Ross having a mana up and probably with the ability to hold up a mana for the rest of the game, it's going to be challenging to trip him up that badly with a Dromoka's Command if he has any of his protection spells.
Well, Collins agrees with you. It's time to go to the air. Time to try to get this game over with while the ground is starting to get locked up a little bit with the Hornet Nest and the Death Mist Raptor. Perhaps some chump blocking can be done by the Elvish Mystic too. But now Merriam is underneath pressure. And now he's got some thinking to do.
Yeah, he may need to just cycle one of his 1 mana spells right now just to get something into play. He's at risk of dying with a bunch of stuff in his hand. I'm sure Ross knows by now that Gerard won.
Yep. Pressure's on.
You lose this game, and Gerard has a chance to really distance himself from you.
Merriam certainly representing a 1 mana effect here, perhaps the Johnny's Presence. Looks like it is. So make a Monk token. He'll untap. It's time to draw. I believe it was a copy of God's Willing. He has a Dromoka's Command in hand.
There's still the issue of how to beat the Hornet Nest, because he can't really just collide into it.
Another Mentor. Looking to go super wide now. Pass turn back. Mullen will draw. Surak. He's got quite the board to analyze right now.
Part of the problem is that there's not a lot to be gained on the ground right now because Ross has some flexibility to chump block. Collins can send into the Deathness Raptor if he anticipates he's not going to need a block on the way back, but Ross with 2 copies of Monastery Mentor can crank out chump blockers for a while.
Yeah, that's not too hard.
So at that point, you're basically looking at what's going on in the air, and I think there may be an argument here for just trying to get Dragon Lord Ojutai in once this turn and possibly next turn backed up by Dromoka's Command to get to exactly 11. It does get complicated because Ross has Secret of the Way in play, and he may gain some life along the way.
Dragon Lord Ojutai comes in. Gonna look at a couple of cards. Hornet Nest is the card that is selected there by Mullen. So you see the hand here for Collins. Another copy of Hornet Nest, Surak, Dromoka's Command, Den Protector.
And I don't think Collins really wanted to tap low for Surak this turn because it couldn't attack and doesn't offer that much defense. But being able to play another Hornet Nest and leave up the mana necessary for Dromoka's Command, this is a solid place to be.
This is not bad at all. Now the question is, how crazy can Ross go this turn? Because he hasn't done anything insane yet. Now, drawing a copy of Dromoka's Command this turn is interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for Zechariah Zoke. Zechariah Zoke, report to the stage, please.
But without Aqua's form, again, without God's Willing, it's just hard for Ross to muster up much of an attack here. And Collins is really pressuring his life total. Ross is not getting a lot of time. When we saw him beat this deck earlier during the Swiss rounds, because of Secret of the Way and just sort of a slow clock on the other side of the table, Ross had a lot of time to get something going. And Collins, in the absence of really being able to interact with Ross's board very much, is doing the next best thing, which is try to kill Ross while your defenses are set up. And it looks like Collins may be able to do just that.
Yeah, this is interesting because Ross has 2 copies of Dromoka's Command in his hand, the ability to cast both. So you can say Dromoka's Command has my Seeker fight your Dragon Lord Ojutai. Prowess will work out well for me. And then I get to gain 4 life. But Ross doesn't want to have the fight on his turn. He wants to have the fight on Collins' turn. So I think we're going to stop in the upkeep. Here's Dromoka's Command. Fight there. Triggers. So Seeker of the Way is going to go after Elvish Mystic. It very clearly cannot go after Dragon Lord Ojutai right now.
And not allowed to be gained by going after the Deathness Raptor. And Collins may have need for mana.
So a lot of stuff on the stack. 2 Monastery Mentors, the Prowess, and then, of course, the Dromoka's Command. And Collins may have a response because he has Dromoka's Command in his hand. So things are going to get complicated.
But Ross has put together a plan here, which appears to be Dromoka's Command right now, gain some life. Probably use the other Dromoka's Command this turn on something. To hope to generate enough tokens and be able to get enough prowess triggers next turn to go around the Hornet's Nest and kill in 1 shot.
Here's a Dromoka Command. From Mullen, it's going to be very interesting to see how he decides to use this. So it looks like we're going to have a fight with Deathness Raptor and Seeker of the Way.
And this is with the prowess trigger still on the stack. So were this to resolve, Ross would not gain any life.
And I believe the +1/+1 counter on Dragonlord Ojutai.
It makes sense for it to be Dragon Lord Ojutai because you shut off Ross's life gain, and then you have 6 points of damage coming across in the air, which is exactly lethal.
All right, third Dromoka's command. Yes. There. Yeah, so Mullen's Dromoka's command was Raptor Fighting Seeker, +1/+1 on Dragonlord Ojutai. We were having a ball. We'll see what Ross's second Dromoka's command is here. He had to take one. He also doesn't want to forget those triggers from Monastery Mentor and everything else that's happening right now. Because there is a lot. Also, those mentors are 4 power creatures now. But
yes.
Not that that will matter that much, I don't think. But Magic can be confusing at times.
What surprised me at this point if the Seeker went, okay, he's still going after the Elvish Mystic. I thought there was a chance that he would go after the Death Mist Raptor because the Mystic is tapped and the Raptor, I guess the Raptor will die anyway in the exchange with the other Dromoka's command, so it's all the same thing.
Yep.
And that leaves Collins with scant few blockers here.
Yeah, what's important here is that Ross is gaining a lot of life. Because he gets to kill the Mystic, gets to deal 4, gain 4, and now this is going to resolve, and it still has lifelink. Now, this next Dromoka's command, well, it's not going to do anything, but Ross has all these prowess tokens now.
And now he's got 7 eligible attackers next turn against 3 blockers, only 2 if Dragonlord Dromoka attacks.
And who knows how many spells, because the trick to be able to get through all of this nonsense with Hornet Nest is you have to go wide against it.
Yes.
And he has to go super wide because once you crack the nest, they're going to kill you on the way back.
It's one shot or nothing.
Yeah. Now, what's made this game really interesting, and the thing I've been thinking about for a little while here is, was there ever an opportunity for the Hornet Nest to be able to fight with Dromoka's command? Give it a +1/+1 counter and have it fight one of Ross's big creatures so that he's forced to crack it, split a bunch of bees open and be able to attack that way. I don't know if that ever surfaced.
Yeah, I think that Collins was sitting on that Dromoka's command for a very long time, just assuming that the battle was going to be over Dragonlord Ojutai at some point, and then he would have a pretty firm response. But Ross, with the second copy, has tripped up Collins in a pretty bad way now. And you see there's just a sea of attackers ready to go next turn. The best case scenario is Collins puts together a blocker.
Yep. And Ross is at a really healthy life total now. He's 13.
And it almost feels like Collins can't stop attacking with Dragonlord Ojutai, because what are you going to do? I mean, you can't hold down the forces forever there. Ross is going to generate so many tokens over time that Collins is almost pushed in this position where he has to play a short game here.
And the longer we go, the worse it is for us. I think Collins has realized that. He's going to come across for 6 points of damage. And, you know, this can net a card that helps.
But this is one of those classic spots of, I know I can't win by blocking, so I have to try to attack.
Yep.
And attacking might not be good here either. Good enough to win the game, but he's got to give it a shot.
Brad Fall and Alex Zorowski are going to game number 3, Green Red Dragons and Jeskai tokens. That'll probably be our last match. Though this one could take a little while longer. Colin's going to sacrifice his fetch land. He's down to 17. Merriam down to 7. There's a Plains. How many spells does Merriam have in his hand? We know he has an Ordeal Thassa.
Shuffling around 2 cards right now.
He has the ability to maybe go crazy with Defiant Strike. I don't believe he has a God's Willing in his hand, but could be incorrect about that. The only one who knows is Ross. There's 2 mana. I think we're going to have a Fleece main line. We will. And, yep, times are getting desperate where he's got to do this.
I like this play from Colin. He's not going to have enough time this game to morph Dead Protector, unmorph it, and then do something with a spell he gets back. So he's just casting it face up and saying, I just need to get as many blockers in play as possible, because Ross still has to be concerned about the Hornet Nest. It has to be an all or nothing proposition. It's very hard for Ross to attack for short of lethal and then win the game after that, given how many tokens the Hornet Nest is going to generate. So Collins identifies that that's the case and says, okay, I just need a 2-1.
We're in Merriam's upkeep. It's time for math.
If it's God's willing, he gets slightly more damage by God's willing a Monastery Mentor to green because all of Colin's blockers are green. Additionally, allows him to scry on the upkeep.
And there's potential to go absolutely crazy with Defiant Strikes this turn. If he chains into those.
Yep.
Yeah, he's doing a bunch of math, which that is expected. Mullins has 4 blockers. Merriam has 7 attackers this turn.
So assuming that we're looking at God's willing, it appears that we're not.
Might be looking at Aqua's form now. We might be looking at Aqua's form ordeal of Thassa and God's willing.
Aqua's form plus God's willing makes it pretty easy because it allows Ross to put those effects on the Monastery Mentor, and that's more damage.
He has so much math he has to do. If he gets this wrong, he dies next turn.
So if he's able to make the Monastery Mentors unable to be blocked, let's say Aqua's form goes on one and God's willing goes on the other, then you have 1 Mentor token coming through because there's 4 blockers against 5 attackers that are all the same. So you have 5 points of damage plus 3 for each spell you're able to generate.
I think what Ross gets to do this turn is make a small attack. I don't think he gets to make a big attack. I think the big attack is next turn.
So you go Aqua's form on 1 Monastery Mentor, maybe God's willing the other one, maybe not. Generate a huge board, hope that you get to next turn for the kill.
The other thing that he has to be really careful of is he has to make sure that Den Protector doesn't slide through.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be a really awkward way to lose.
So he sort of needs to keep a spell up.
Yep.
To be sure that he's able to block that on the way
back.
back.
Or Mentor back.
Right.
Yeah. Doesn't want to goof there because that would be a rough way to go. That text doesn't come up a ton. Scry trigger. That card's going to the bottom real fast. 3 damage going to be dealt past the turn back because the next turn he might be able to do the alpha. Now, for what it's worth, Kyle Mullins could win the game this turn.
Yep.
Smoker's Command. It's just a Temple of Plenty. He'll play a Temple. Take a look at the top card.
But his hand offers no protection right now. And Dragon Lord Oversight connecting is nice, but it means that Tremoka's Command isn't lethal, even if he finds it, because we're past combat and he can't get that extra point.
And a deck like that mid-range, no reach, no rhinos, no crackling dooms, no lightning strikes, none of that stuff. Now putting Merriam down to 1 to shut off that mana confluence, that might change some things.
Well, at this point now, I mean, Ross's board is so overwhelming. Last turn, Collins was barely holding onto the board, and Ross has generated several tokens since then and dealt damage last turn.
I'm still in agreement with you, though. For Collins to win this game, he can't stop attacking.
Yep.
And he's not going to stop attacking. Trigger. 3 cards. Glare of Heresy is one of them. The other 2 don't matter all that much. They're just lands.
I mean, Collins can hope that this sticks. It's at least some hope.
Glare of Heresy. Nice, reaching for that God's Willing real fast. Okay.
And the patience that Ross showed, he was considering using this on the upkeep a couple turns ago for some selection and maybe some damage. And good thing he held on to it, is the short of it, because I don't think Collins can win now.
Top card, bottom card. Fleece Main Lion.
I mean, Ross still has to cobble together quite a few prowess triggers, but
That's a trick. Now, he does have Ordeal of Thassa in his hand. He scry the top card to the bottom. It has to be this turn. It's simple. 5 blockers.
but remember that mentor comes through uncontested, and it gets an ordeal trigger to boot. So I think Ross might exactly have it, even without a spell.
Dromoka's commands the draw. I would not. I would actually, if the Mana Confluence is on the table for us, I would just throw it off of the table.
Don't tap it.
Yeah.
This would be a horrible way to go out,
Do
given
not
how
just-
brilliantly Ross has navigated the game up until this point.
Just rip it up. Just don't touch it.
I mean, there's 5 blockers on the other side of the table.
So the 5 middle creatures that he set aside,
Those get blocked.
yep, those get blocked.
If Ordeal of Thassa goes onto Monastery Mentor, that's worth 4 points of damage, and then there's the uncontested blockers. Dromoka's command makes this easier because Ross can clear a blocker out of the way to boot.
2 more monk tokens coming. Not that those matter all that much right now. Counter. Prowess trigger 2. Prowess triggers everywhere.
This is the same thing as casting the Ordeal from a damage perspective, but it also removes a blocker.
Yep.
And I think now we're going to see the Alpha Strike.
Prowess on everybody. Yarr. Get them all in there. All those Jacob Wilsons. I know that Jacob Wilson did sign a player's card for Ross at the beginning of their Season 1 quarterfinal matchup. I bet Ross is glad to have him here. He wins this match 2-1. And he is moving on to play against Gerard Fabiano in one heck of a game there. Stabilizing at 1 life. Monastery Mentor against this deck is unbelievable.
I mean, he had to get in every chip shot that he possibly could. Had to navigate the sequences on the upkeep perfectly. Looked really bad for him at several spots there, but able to barely hang on at 1 life. Avoided some draws there from Colin last turn. Dromoka's command would have just killed him.